Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Cigar Chat. In this edition, I wanted to go ahead and talk about a pretty cool piece of Tampa, Florida history, which is championship wrestling from Florida. For those of you guys that know, championship wrestling from Florida was an independent league or territory, like they used to call it, that functioned here in the Tampa area in the 60s, 70s, and 80s under the leadership of Eddie Graham. Who had been a former wrestler himself. And it was actually started by a gentleman named Cowboy Luttrell. They were like the precursors to like what's now the WWF and all the big wrestling entertainment that's out there now. But they were doing it on a local level at the building, which I actually went to visit recently with my son at 106 North Albany Avenue in Tampa. Here we are in Tampa, right off of Albany Ave and Kennedy. We're going to make a left onto what used to be the Tampa Sportatorium, which was where the Championship Wrestling from Florida was filmed. I think it's right here at 106. This is, I think, right here. I think that's it. Let's check it out. There it is, the old Tampa Sportatorium. They had it painted in black, and then they would film the wrestling matches from inside. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty cool, huh? So in this building, they used to film. Can you imagine? They had a ticket window there. And then they used to like film like the wrestling matches here. Eddie Graham and all these guys. It's legendary. Right off of Kennedy Boulevard, yeah. From like 65 to like 87, I think it was. It's pretty legendary. Wow. So the ticket window was probably that little window there. Yeah, they're doing some work to it. Construction or whatever. How sad. This would have made them an amazing museum. This was probably the ticket window here. Wow. See, if you see the building, it's elongated in the back. So you could tell that that's probably where the matches were. They would basically paint like the back of, or paint the inside of the building all black. And it wasn't really that large, but it seemed like there was thousands of people in there, which is pretty amazing. And they would sell tickets here out of the window, and then, you could come to the filmings here, to the tapings. See, here's the little alleyway, and you can see how long. It's a very long building. But this was what used to be the Tampa Sportatorium. Eddie Graham's offices and wrestling matches were right here. He used to film them here. Let's go check out the armory too. See, there's the front, there's the facade. And this right here is the old armory. And this is where they actually used to hold the matches. Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. I mean, so many people. So many guys wrestled here. So this is literally around the corner from Eddie Graham's office, where they used to do the tapings at. The old Fort Homer Hester Lee armory. So the building is still there. Rumor is sadly they're gonna go ahead and knock that building down. I would have really preferred and loved that they would have turned that building into a museum for wrestling. Because honestly, guys, Tampa is famous for three things. Like my buddy Mario Nunez says, number one, cigars. Serafin de Cuba Cigars, by the way, is sponsoring the show today, my brand. So make sure to check out our website and order some great cigars from there if you haven't already. And the other thing is, of course, baseball. Tampa's produced more baseball players than any other part of the United States, which is unbelievable. And let me just say that that's also historical. I've done a few videos on that before, but it's pretty much because of the connection through Cuba and cigars that brought baseball to Tampa, and it was a wildfire that spread after that. And number three, I would say, was wrestling. I mean, wrestling was a pretty big deal here in the area. I'm going to fire up my cigar, as a matter of fact. It's always good to, fire it up with the soft flame inside. Sometimes the torch, I feel like it just gives it way too much temperature, but they're good if you're outside. You basically got, the basic three things. You got, baseball, you got cigars, you got wrestling, all in the Tampa area. Now, you guys got to remember that this was before Florida and Tampa had professional sports like, baseball or football even. Those were the days, that people were just glued to wrestling on their television and across the country. But different territories arose around the country, like Vince McMahon's dad had WWF in like the Northeast. Then you had Jim Crockett Productions in like the Mid-Atlantic. All over the place. They were all different territories. But here in the Tampa area, this Deep South Productions, I guess is what it was called, was Eddie Graham's baby, Eddie Gossett. And like Mario Nunez from Tampa Natives show always says to me, he says, what a great place to live. I mean, you'll see in my video here how, 106 North Albany Avenue was around the corner. That was actually what was called the Sportatorium. And the Sportatorium, you'll see it in the video, was a building that acted not only as their studio, where they did all the filming, but it was also a gym, it was their office, everything was right there. And then around the corner from there was the old Hester Lee Armory. So they would put on live shows at the Armory on weekends. I think they could fit like 2,000 or 3,000 people at the time. It's now owned by the Glazer family that owns the Buccaneers, and they turned it into a different kind of building or center or whatever. But the building is still there. But 106 North Albany Avenue was their official headquarters, and it's really interesting because when you stand out there and you look at the building, you say, "Oh my God, how did they do it here?" Well, they painted all the walls inside black, and then that became their recording studios. I think they could fit like a couple hundred people, and then the people would go there and watch live. They'd watch the matches, and they were being taped, which that would air later on around the country. And I think here in Tampa was Channel 44. I think it was Sunday mornings Sunday mornings is when they would air it. And I remember, I was a little kid living up in Jersey, and I'd watch championship wrestling from Florida. It was a big deal. If you can imagine, this area here produced such talent like Hulk Hogan, Randy the Macho Man Savage, Dusty Rhodes. He became a big deal here in town. He was a very famous wrestler, of course, with the WWF years later. But, you had Hiro Matsuda, you had Killer Carl Cox. You had both of the Grahams, Eddie Graham and his son Mike later. He also wrestled. You had Hercules Hernandez, Chief Wahoo McDaniel, Ric Flair. You know, Bruiser Brody, Terry Funk, Jack Briscoe, Mr. Sato, or Sato, I should say, Ravaging Rick Rude, some of the Von Erichs, you know, Kerry Von Erich, they wrestled here. Blackjack Mulligan, Abdullah the Butcher. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. It was just unbelievable. So many famous people. Haystacks Calhoun. God, I mean, I hope I'm not missing anybody. I know I am, but there were so many famous wrestlers that came out of this area. Tampa produced a lot of talent, and a lot of them had trained in Vern Gagne's wrestling school. You know, and then they came here to Tampa, and they had brilliant careers. The Championship Wrestling from Florida was part of the National Wrestling Alliance, or NWA. So what that did was it provided an opportunity for different wrestlers across the country to come here to Tampa and perform here, and they would exchange talent. Andre the Giant came here. I mean, it was just unbelievable, the amount of wrestlers that came here to this area, and like I said, it just took off. I mean, it was a big deal. Dusty Rhodes, I mean, he was probably the biggest star that came out of the Sportatorium and came out of the Championship Wrestling here from Florida. It was crazy, but I think they were really ahead of their time, especially with like the videos that they did, and I mean the fact that they were able to incorporate, you know, make a studio recording there every week, and then they were also able to hold these live matches. Not only in Florida, or in Tampa, but they went to Miami, they went to Orlando, they went all over the state. I mean, it was a big deal. And this was, of course, syndicated around the country. So out of all the territories that the NWA had, Florida was probably one of the most popular ones, or one of the most successful ones, I should say. And great, you know, footage from that time period. I mean, the wrestlers that came here. I just think it's so neat that they were able to do this in this building, and you know, I mean, they were way ahead of their time, especially with everything going on today. And I mean, I don't know. As a little kid, I was always glued to the television, watching wrestling, watching baseball, of course. But you know, I spent my early years in Jersey. My parents were up there, you know, at the time. And I remember going to Madison Square Garden. That was a big deal for me, going there as a kid and watching the matches there. But Championship Wrestling from Florida was kind of like a little bit of a generation before me, even though I was able to see a little bit of it, because this went all the way through 1987, when Jim Crockett Productions took over. At that time, you know, sadly, Eddie Graham had already passed away back in 85. You know, he died in 85. And then they sold it off to Jim Crockett Productions, and then they were able to keep it around for a little bit. So up until 1987, I was able to watch some of the episodes. And of course, throughout the years, you know, I was able to see some of the footage and listen to the stories. But there's a lot of local friends of mine that live here that grew up going to the Sportatorium. They were able to go to the Armory and watch the live matches. I mean, Carlito Fuente, who's a dear friend of mine, he remembers how big wrestling was in Tampa. Mario Nunez from the Tampa Natives show, he actually got a chance to interview, you know, Mike Graham, the son of Eddie, which is a great interview. I just watched it the other day, and it's just so much phenomenal information on there. And then Mike Baluja, he's also, I reached out to him, and he was able to give me some pictures, and I'll put some of the pictures up so you guys can see it, and give me some of the information too. And I could probably attempt to say that Championship Wrestling from Florida was the true pioneer of what is now WWF. And, you know, you got to think about it. Basically, the McMahons took this whole idea of it being a regional territory, and they just blew it up. I mean, once the WWF took over the World Wrestling Federation, that was kind of the end of all the independent leagues. even though they were still around for a while, but they just did not have the power that they did back in the day when it was all territories. Because, you know, like one territory would have a champ, and then they would wrestle the one from here. And it was kind of, like I said, the National Wrestling Alliance. It was an alliance of all these different independent territories. And it was all just agreements, like, you know, certain parts of the country. I know Canada had Grand Prix wrestling. That was a huge deal up there. Had so much talent up there that came out of there. Of course, Andre the Giant wrestled up there for a while as well. The Rock's dad, Rocky Johnson, he was a big time wrestler up there. And just so many different wrestlers came here to Tampa to wrestle. Cuban Assassin, he came out of here too. You know, they were also very fortunate to have the great Gordon Solly. He was the broadcaster. And Gordon Solly had been a radio TV personality. So he was the one that would do like the live, you know, play-by-play, the broadcasting inside the sportatorium, and of course, all the different events. But he was just an amazing talent in his own right. So anyway, thanks for watching. And like Gordon used to say, so long from the Sunshine State. Take care.